Good evening and welcome to this Discovery series. This is the sixth part of a seven-part series, and in this session, we will be talking about US programs in film, communications, journalism, and related fields. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce Education USA to you. Education USA is a US State Department network. We are the official source on higher education in the US. And our mandate is to provide accurate, comprehensive, and current information to students looking to pursue higher studies in the US. There are over 430 centers in over 175 countries and territories, and there are 7 centers in India. They are located in Ahmedabad, Bangalore, Chennai, Hyderabad, Kolkata, Mumbai, and New Delhi. So I've put their contact details up here, and you're welcome to get in touch with the center nearest you. There's also a link that I'd like to point out to you that's on the top right-hand side of the screen. This link will allow you to view this contact information. You will also find at the link further information on how to connect with Education USA. And there are also brochures from the universities participating in this session. And you will be able to find out more information about these universities with these, through these brochures. So for today's session, as I said, our session is up, our webinar is titled Creating Communicate Programs in Film, Media, Journalism, and More. And this is a very exciting field. We're very excited to bring the session to you. In India especially, the media and entertainment industry is rapidly growing. It's supposed to grow at about 14%. Between 2019 and 2024, which is above the global average of 4.2%. And there are all of these exciting developments. Digital media is really taking off and has become the third largest segment of the industry in 2019. And of course, there are matching developments globally as well. So both nationally and globally, this scene is a very exciting scene to be a part of. And we're very delighted to have this webinar today in which we will be talking about the different programs that you can study in these various fields and their associated careers. There will be time for questions at the end of the presentation, so we'll request that you send in your questions and we will take them at the end. When you send in your questions, do feel free to indicate whether you are interested in undergraduate or graduate study, and also whether you are speaking about a particular field or you would like your question to be addressed to a particular panelist. Do try to keep your questions relevant to the topic, and if you have additional questions about higher studies in the US in general, you can contact an Education USA center near you to talk to them further about that. So for now, let me introduce our speakers to you for today. First up in the order in which they will be speaking, we have first Frederick Osborne, Associate Director of Admission at Emerson College. He's speaking about communications and related programs. From the School of Communication at Ohio State University, we have Dr. Nicole Kraft, Associate Professor of Clinical Communication, and Professor Spencer Hunt, Lecturer and Director of Student Media. They will be speaking about journalism as well as the PhD pathway in communications for those of you who are more academically oriented. And then finally, from New York Film Academy, we have Lizzy Sack, the Associate Director of Strategic Initiatives, who will be speaking about film and related fields. So thank you all of you for joining us today. We're just so happy that you could take this time and spend it with us. Eric, over to you for communications and related fields. And do let me know when I can change slides for you.
Absolutely. Deborah, thank you so much for including me in this. And I'm so excited to talk about just some opportunities at Emerson College, but generally I think that they're really good things to learn about this field overall. I always say that most of the programs at Emerson center around storytelling because we are an arts and communication university. And I think that that nature of storytelling is really what kind of the communication field is all about. So for the first program that I want to talk about is our Business of Creative Enterprises program. So Deborah, if you want it, perfect. Thank you so much. So this is a really, really interesting, cool opportunity for students to study business, communication, and marketing in creative industries. So students interested in this program get the opportunity to take courses in all three of those areas, as well as getting to focus on an area of the arts so that they can kind of be a leader in that industry. So if you're interested in being a film producer, owning your own art gallery, directing your own music festival or something like that, this is a really, really amazing opportunity for you. We actually have 3 iterations of the Business of Creative Enterprises program at Emerson College. The first one is our BCE Boston-based program, which is a 4-year program. And then our 2 global BA programs, which I'll talk a little bit about later. The next thing I want to talk about is media studies and media arts production. At Emerson, we're kind of known as a film school, a film institution. And I think that there are a lot of different ways that you may not think about kind of going into these programs and learning about them. So we have media studies and media arts production at Emerson College. I liken the difference between these 2 programs to like the difference between the astronomer and the astronaut. So media studies is the astronomer. They study film, they study television, its history and its effect on culture. And if you're interested in learning more about that, then you'd be looking at our possible career paths in being a film critic, working in entertainment law or something like that. If you want to create film, maybe you want to, be a cinematographer on the next Marvel film, or you're interested in writing your own screenplay, you would be looking at our media arts production majors. So you can choose from areas like screenwriting, directing, cinematography, anything that you can possibly think of. And the great thing about coming to Emerson College and going to film schools in general is that you get to work with the actual equipment that you'd be using out in the real world. So there's real value to kind of utilizing these programs because there's some hands-on experience that you'll get in a bachelor's degree program focused on film that you can then parlay into a professional career. And there are a lot of internship opportunities that are available to you as well. Emerson, for instance, has an LA program where students can actually go out and they can intern for a semester. A lot of our students actually receive job offers from those internships as well. We've had students intern for Sony, Netflix, the E channel, a lot of really amazing opportunities there. So next, I want to talk a little bit about another program that we have. It is our communication studies program. So this is more broad in nature. As you can see, it has 5 different options that you can take advantage of as a student. Public relations, communication studies, political communication, sports communication, and then another global BA program that I'll talk a little bit about later. So our PR program is a great opportunity for students who want to use communication to manage crises. So maybe you want to work for a company and manage their PR, their communication. If you're interested in events management, event planning, human resource management is a great fit for students interested in communication studies, healthcare administration, all that sort of stuff. You're basically using the power of the written word and the spoken word to kind of communicate to an audience and go from there. So I think that that's the really exciting thing about all of these opportunities in communication studies. And then what you can do is you can kind of tilt them towards the field that you're interested in. As you can see, we also offer political communication programs and sports communication program as well. Now, all things to consider and all really cool opportunities in that respect. So the next thing is our journalism program. Our journalism program at Emerson is really exciting because it's very multifaceted. And I think that journalism is at a really interesting point, specifically, in American culture, but all over the world right now. So, being a strong journalist in this day and age really means that you have to be a very multifaceted storyteller. So Emerson's program really focuses on news broadcasting, digital media, and print media, and gives you the opportunity to kind of work in any of those 3 areas. I mean, we are kind of in the age of the BuzzFeed generation, meaning we, have people who aren't just kind of writing newspaper articles, they're out there shooting their own content. They're really kind of, telling their story in many different ways, which I think is really exciting and definitely something that you want to think about when you're thinking about a journalism career, is that it's not just about writing anymore. It's about going out and being able to work a camera and being able to kind of use a multitude of medias to basically tell your story and tell what it's all about. Our marketing communications program is a really amazing opportunity for students who are interested in advertising, brand management, market research, data, and data analytics is a huge part of marketing in this day and age. So if you're interested in a marketing career, this is definitely something you're going to want to think about. Are you interested in data? Are you interested in numbers? Are you interested in kind of looking at how audiences came to be and how to connect with them? This is a big part of marketing and a big part of the conversation in this day and age. So you're definitely going to want to remember that and consider that when you're thinking about it as a career. And marketing professionals can go into marketing companies. They can go into marketing offices within larger companies. They can start their own firms. All that sort of stuff. There's a lot of different ways that you can go about it. And this is more specific to Emerson, but I did think it was worth pointing out that a lot of American institutions, Emerson included, have opportunities for you to be able to create your own program or create your own major. So if you're interested in a school, but you don't necessarily see the program for you, start thinking about a problem you want to solve, an interest that you have, and really kind of start asking around if they have this create your own major opportunity, because it could be a really amazing way for you to be able to kind of bring together two interests that you have. I know that at Emerson, students who have been interested in documentary filmmaking and politics have come up with their own political filmmaking major. Or if you're interested in journalism and comedy and all that sort of stuff, there's a lot of great ways for you to bring together programs that you're interested in and get something that you're really excited about. So I would definitely think about creating your own program in storytelling, in communication, if that's something that you want to do. And our global portal programs, I mean, this webinar alone is a really, really great example about how our world is becoming more globalized and, and how students are kind of looking outside of their home country for educational experiences. At Emerson, we really want students to do that. So we have these global portal programs, which offer more robust international experiences for our students. So they're partnership programs with other universities. Our Franklin University Switzerland programs are 2+2 programs, meaning that students get to spend 2 years at Franklin in Lugano in the southern part of Switzerland. They obtain an associate's degree after that 2-year period, and then they transfer directly to Emerson College. So students can actually study business of creative enterprises, Switzerland, and in Switzerland, and international and political communication in Switzerland, to really be able to kind of add an international lens to their academic program overall. So in international and political communication, when students join our political communication program as juniors and seniors at Emerson, they come with this international focus, and they're able to build upon this view of America and American politics from more of an outside perspective, which I think is really exciting. And then our Business of Creative Enterprises program is an amazing opportunity for students to focus on international management, any of that sort of stuff, to be able to, again, bring this international perspective or further international perspective to their bachelor's degree program and to Emerson College. Our Global BA in Business of Creative Enterprises Australia is a cohort-based program, meaning you and 25 other students will actually travel around from campus to campus. You'll spend 4 summers in Boston, your first 2 academic years at ICMS, International College of Management, Sydney, in Australia, and then your 3rd academic year, you can do a full academic year in Boston. You do have the opportunity to apply for a semester at our LA program as well. So this is a really amazing opportunity for you to intern in possibly all 3 of those cities, as well as the opportunity to study business, study the arts, fashion, tourism, hospitality, any of that sort of stuff, a wide variety of areas, really taking advantage of what ICMS has to offer in terms of their course load, and interning and getting professional hands-on experience in 2 very divergent countries. So you also want to think about, not only what kind of, in-classroom experience you're having in terms of your academics, but also, the cultural aspects and the international kind of components that can be a part of your education in the United States, because we're very pro study abroad here, and it's definitely something you could consider as well. Now I want to talk a little bit about our alumni of the university, where they're going and how they're utilizing their Emerson degrees to basically go ahead and kind of find what they're interested in. So Miguel Cervantes was in our theater program, and now he is or was the lead in Chicago's Hamilton. Eliza Schlesinger has a bunch of different specials on Netflix. She was film and video production. She's a very famous comedian. Stephanie Robinson focused on screenwriting while she's here, and now she writes for a bunch of different television shows on FX. And Maria Menounos was in broadcast journalism while she was at Emerson. She now works for E! Entertainment News. So we have some students going on to doing some really exciting things and getting some really amazing hands-on experience. And I'm really excited to kind of hear from our other universities to kind of see what pathways are for students. And I want to thank you so much for sitting and learning more about Emerson College.
Thank you so much, Eric. That was a wonderful overview of media, communications, interdisciplinary studies, marketing, creative enterprises, the business of creative enterprises, and so much more. Thank you very much for that overview. Over to you, Nicole and Spencer, I believe, who will now talk about journalism and the PhD in communication.
Hi, everybody. So we're going to have a little different presentation because Spencer and I are faculty members at Ohio State. So we are not necessarily in the process of being able to recruit students on a regular basis. And Eric does an amazing job showing the features of Emerson in general. We're going to focus more on kind of the idea of why you might major in journalism or communication, journalism more specifically, because that's what Spencer and I both focus on. And then we're going to talk to you a little bit about the PhD pathway in communication, of which Ohio State is one of the top 5 programs in the world as per the Shanghai rankings. So if we could, next slide, please. So, we wanted to give you an idea of all the things that really encompass journalism, because a lot of people think about journalism from one facet or another. So they'll either think about it related to broadcast, or they'll think about it related to print, or something very rigid and specific. But in fact, journalism encompasses all sorts of skills, all sorts of experiences. And what we tell our students is, if you want the major that's going to prepare you to be anybody, journalism is the major that will do that. So we have quite a few students that go into law school, that go into politics, that go into some form of entertainment, any form of communication. Even we have students that end up going on to sciences and other elements, but they know that the ability to communicate is key to their success. So when you're thinking about a major, it's not always thinking about the major that's going to specifically get you a specific position. It's the major that might prepare you to be prepared for any position. And communication and journalism is one of those. And you can see just some samples here about the skills and the opportunities that you would have in such a major. Next slide, please. But if you are looking at positions related specifically to journalism, this is an idea of where you end up going. So, as Eric noted, it used to be, that newspapers were kind of a solitary pursuit, and it was you became a print writer or you became something else, but you were pretty rigid in what you did. Now, we're totally with him that we create people to do any number of these positions and any role at these positions. So, we have newspapers and we still prepare students from a writing perspective. We prepare them for broadcast. We prepare them for long form writing like magazines would entail. We prepare them for audio broadcasting. We say radio here, but of course, podcasting and streaming and all of these features that the internet has brought us has opened up the pathways pretty dramatically for students to do any number of opportunities in any field. And so that's what we want to make sure is when they leave our program, and I know that this is, the quality journalism programs will provide this, that you're prepared to do anything. And that's always the goal for us. Next slide. So in the end, we're talking about all of this is journalism. And what journalism is kind of the fundamental focus of what we do, because it's not the mechanism of being able to write or produce audio or video or take pictures or do anything that's a skill based. That's a huge part of what we do. But really what we focus on is the philosophy behind journalism, which is truth telling. There is no such thing as fake news. There's just falsehoods. And so journalism itself operates in the realm of truth. It operates with the goal of, next slide, please, of being able to provide this foundation for democracy, so that democracies have educated electorates and voters who can make decisions based on facts and not rumor, innuendo, or opinion. It gives us the ability to communicate as a society. That's what journalism was intended. You know, in the United States, we have the First Amendment, which really shapes what we do, and the First Amendment, which provides for freedom of press, freedom of speech, and three other things. Really, that goal was to keep government accountable, and that's what we work to do, is to make sure that we provide the skill base, the philosophical base, the ethical base, and the legal base that will allow students to understand how important the role of a journalist is in a democracy. And I'm going to turn it over to Spencer, and he's going to talk about specifically kind of how the major works, the kind of things that you would get out of it. And we go to the next slide and start. That'd be great.
So I'd like to begin basically by talking about you know, how if you know this major is right for you. A lot of people get drawn to this because they feel like it's an important role that they can take on. But generally speaking, if you have a curiosity about the world and people, and you see yourself as a writer or a storyteller, then this is something that's an option for you. If the prospect of talking to new people that you've never met before terrifies you, it may not be. But what we talk about doing here is taking that innate curiosity that you have, and then how you can go out into a whole new strange situation, learn what you need to know, and then communicate it in a clear and accurate way. Next slide, please. And so why journalism? As Dr. Kraft said very eloquently, these skills can apply to any kind of interpersonal communication, research, investigations, analytics, creativity. And what we're doing is we're taking two specific skill sets. One is the ability to walk into a strange situation and figure out what it is that you need to know so that you can understand it. And then taking that and then teaching another set of skills so that you could either write it or tell it or show it in a way that other people will clearly understand it. And that is a valuable skill set that's important, not just in journalism, but for any other communication field. Along with that, what we're talking about doing is teaching the ethics and the legal rules that we all need to follow when we're communicating honestly as well as effectively. Next slide, please. So I think the next slide is basically what it is that we're doing here, what within the major. And so one of the things I like about our journalism program is that it's academic, but it's also practical. And so just about every class that you're going to take within this major, within communications, you get a grade for what you're going to do in your class, but you also have an opportunity to get it published or posted so that other people are going to see it and then react to it. And we'll talk a little bit more about why that works a little bit later on in this. But Ohio State is a huge campus. There's 60,000 some students here. There's stories all over the place. And so when we're talking about what we're doing in class, we're really putting you out there in the world, writing stories about real people. And that mix of classroom learning and hands-on experience is really important, especially when we're talking about how you're going to bring all that together and communicate consistently in a style that people expect from news and news sources. Next slide, please. So within the major itself, we're going to be talking about, there's the introduction to mass media. We get into basic writing techniques. We're also getting into multimedia tools. how to look at a potential story and judge how newsworthy it is, but then also go out and begin to ask the questions of essential, basically news gathering, okay? And then we're also bringing in classes that talk about the philosophy and the principles of journalism, the history of journalism, and especially journalism law and ethics, which is really important. And as you advance within the major, then we get into reporting and writing. And one of the features of this is, the class 2221, which Nicole teaches, and 2223, which I teach. We're talking about getting stories published within the Lantern, which is the student newspaper. And we're really getting into the nuts and bolts of how we construct and edit and produce stories for mass consumption. Next slide, please. All of this comes together at the Lantern, but we also have other organizations that help you bring what you're learning in class to a larger audience. The Lantern is considered the student newspaper, but what we really are, especially in the age of COVID, is we're a digital news organization. We get about 3 million to 4 million page views a year. And what you're doing in our classes is largely going to be produced and published here. The more you go through the major, the more you're able to hone your skills, the more likely you could become an editor at the Lantern and pursue some of the biggest stories of the day that we have. Next slide, please. And those stories are the stories that we're seeing produced on a national scale. So our students will write about very real things that are happening in the world. This is a photo of 3 of our student reporters who were covering the Black Lives Matter protests in downtown Columbus. Unfortunately, this was a few seconds before they were illegally pepper sprayed by police, something that has happened to journalists across this country. I'm not saying that if you come to Ohio State, this is something that's going to happen to you. God forbid, this is a very rare event. But we're talking about journalists who put themselves in real situations. And are you a student when you're writing about this? No, you're a journalist. And that's the kind of experience that we're talking about when you come to Ohio State and pursue this major. Next slide, please. It used to be that when you were a journalism major, when I was, that all you had to do was learn how to report and then write the story. But we're living in a digital age. And as Mr. Osborne was saying very effectively earlier in his presentation, you are no longer expected as a journalist to just specialize in one thing. And so before you leave this major, you will also have a grounding in multimedia. A reporter needs to not only know how to report and write, but how to take photos, shoot and edit their own video, analyze data, and podcast as well. All of these skills are things that you'll be able to walk out through the door being able to do in this major at Ohio State. Next slide, please. And a lot of people will think about the Lantern as a student newspaper, but we will help you within this major to specialize within any medium that you most feel gravitating towards. So if you see yourself more as a video storyteller, if you see yourself more as an audio storyteller, all of these things are available to you within the major that we have. And so all of these skills are important to learn and to produce. And we think it's essential for you to walk out the door with all of them, because that's what makes you most marketable to people who are looking to hire you. Next slide, please. The benefits that come along with this is you're going to network with a ton of people that are here at Ohio State, but have also graduated from Ohio State. We have people at all levels of the industry within the country: Washington Post, New York Times, and the skills-based training that you get within this program, that practical side of things. Well, that basically helps you to go out and then be very competitive for internships and that first entry-level job within the field. Now, because we're in journalism and we believe in telling the truth, there's basically some costs that go along with this. There's a lot of disruption in the industry right now, and there's no job guarantees that are out there. But next slide, please. We do want to say that right now, the field is a little bit upside down. The average cost in a J school in America is $54,000, and the average pay for a reporter in the United States is less than $45,000. But if we go on to the next slide, if you're passionate about this career, if you're passionate about learning about this skill set, there are all sorts of opportunities that exist, far more than existed when I was able to graduate from my school. So in addition, in newspapers and magazines, there's tons of digital-only news operations that are out there that are interested in hiring new people with all of these skills. Broadcast television, communications fields like public relations and marketing, there's tons of options available for anyone that has this skill set. And if you can walk into a situation that's completely unknown to you, ask the questions that you need so that you can understand it, and then turn around within a matter of a few hours and produce a story that lets everybody understand it, well, that's a skill that people are looking for, and they're going to want to hire you. And I'm going to turn this back over to Nicole. She could talk about the PhD pathways that we have here at Ohio State.
So I just want to kind of give us a little bit of an overview about graduate school in general. And, you know, in journalism, graduate school is not necessarily required because to a great degree, people are looking for experience. So, you know, before you were considering taking a pathway that would take you directly from a journalism undergraduate into a journalism graduate, we would encourage you to, you know, kind of explore different fields and decide where you might want to focus. What I want to talk about more specifically is the research end of a PhD communication program, because that's what we do here at Ohio State. Can we have next slide, please? So if you are interested in journalism PhDs, Northwestern is an outstanding program, University of Missouri, Boston, New York University, Columbia. Those are some of the most prominent journalism graduate programs that we have in the United States. Ohio State, as I mentioned earlier, has consistently been in a top 5 program for communication degrees. So if you are looking for a doctorate, you can actually look at a few better places than Ohio State. And we offer the opportunity to do high-level research. We're what's called a Research 1 institution, which means the highest level of research is done within the walls of our university. And as Spencer mentioned, we have more than 60,000 students at our university. The vast majority, of course, are undergraduates, but we have a significant population of master's and PhD students, which provides for a really strong community, you know, really strong presence in terms of our shared governance system. The experience of being a graduate student at Ohio State is pretty unique. If you could go to the next slide. So, and I'm not sure why these slides look like this, but we'll work with it. I just want to give you an idea of how many doctorate degrees are conferred in this country. As you know, there's 631 communication doctorates that were conferred in 2018, which was the clearest and most accurate recent data that I could find. And then you can see some of the data as it breaks down in terms of where specifically different majors were pursued, different fields of study, different fields of research. We do have a really extensive network of research opportunities in the United States as it relates to communication research, and that certainly we have a presence that goes international, you know, through our relationships with different research organizations and different educational organizations. So your pursuit of the doctorate at the United States in a communication field will set you up pretty well moving forward from a career, no matter where you were to pursue that. Next screen, please. So just to give you an idea of where the majority of communication doctorates were bestowed. Now, just because a university has a significant number of doctorates doesn't make that necessarily a good thing. So I just want to give you an idea of the numbers when you are looking to apply. The most important thing that you want to look for, though, are placements. So, you know, it's great that University of Texas may have 30 doctoral degrees, but the key is that those people get jobs afterwards. At Ohio State, we have usually about a dozen doctoral candidates, between 9 and 12 at any time, that we bring in on a cohort, and the majority, and we pick a number that we know that we can get placements for positions later, either as postdocs or in university positions. So it's an important piece of the program that you're going to be looking at, is how well they sustain you through your program and then place you subsequent to your program. Next, please. This just gives you an idea of how much time it may take you to get a doctorate should you wish to pursue one in communication. You can see it's pretty consistent across these different majors for the length of time from a bachelor's degree, but in terms of the actual graduate study, communication is one of the shortest terms of the different graduate degrees. So it will take you between 5 and 7 years at Ohio State to get your doctorate. Next slide, please. And this is really the main reason why you pursue a PhD in communication, because you are committed to doing research, you're committed to working with world-renowned faculty to extend the amount of knowledge that we have in various communication fields. So at Ohio State, for example, we are known for our political communication. We're renowned for our health communication, understanding how health messaging affects people, which is an extremely important dynamic right now, as we can see with the COVID crisis. We focus on violence in video games and understanding social media environments and online environments and why people behave one way in an online environment when they behave a different way in the real environment. We look at children and their engagement with technology. These are just some of the areas that you'd be able to focus on. All of our researchers are world renowned. So you do coursework where you build up this body of knowledge, and then you develop your skills in research with the goal that you would be advancing the research understanding and communication in the field that you choose, or the research focus that you have at the highest possible level. And that's really the most important thing when you're searching for a doctoral program, is to make sure that you're working with faculty who operate at an extremely high level and have the kind of networking that would allow you to get published, to get papers, to be able to be first author on papers, to make sure that you have a collaborative environment where people want to work with you and build up your body of research before you leave your program. Because the more that you can accomplish within the framework of your program, the more successful that you're going to be in your pursuit of your own research and academic position. Next slide, please. Just to give you an idea of the international students that we have, you can see it's a significant number of international students that we welcome into the PhD programs. So I hope that this is an area that you consider, coming to the United States, if not Ohio State specifically, to pursue a doctoral degree. I think it's one of the things that makes our university so such an amazing place, is the cacophony of voices that we have and the different perspectives that we bring, and our ability to foster this kind of melting pot of cultures within the framework of our research institution. So this is a really great opportunity to be part of a culture that's larger than yourself, but that each culture is incorporated into and welcomed. Next slide, please. So this is an idea of the career opportunities. So as you know, it says 93% of the doctoral candidates from 2018 either received a postdoctoral fellowship or a postdoctoral research associateship. And that's what I was talking about earlier, about the need to make sure that placement is in your future. Now, we do know that times are going to be much more challenging now related to COVID, and we have difficulties, and there's difficulties ahead of us that we don't know about, but we do know that the quality doctoral programs have a commitment to you that transcends the experiences that you have within the classwork or in the research field, in the walls of the university where you get your degree. So, being able to identify which ones are going to be the most able to help you as you move forward into your own career is going to be key to selecting the program that's right for you. Next slide, please. And this is just an example. So we had 55% in communication doctorates reporting definite employment as postgraduates, 84 reported employment in academia. So that number is slightly lower. We are seeing some contractions in universities. We're seeing we're going to see changing demographics, especially with the ramifications from COVID. The one thing about a communication degree, though, is communication is an extremely popular major in a large number of universities, and other universities have made the transition. They'll take a major like journalism or like mass media or something like that, and they will bring it into their communication program. So unlike some other majors that have seen really dramatic contractions, history comes to mind, we're not seeing the level of contraction in communication nearly as much. And what we're finding is that that communication degree will allow you much greater opportunity for placement subsequently, because it is a major that's continuing to sustain high numbers. At Ohio State, for example, we have more than 1,800 students in our communication major, undergraduate students. And that's larger than many universities that we have in the United States. So thinking about it in terms of a major that would allow you to have a great deal of opportunity within the major, you can focus on a plethora of different fields, as I mentioned, from health to politics to entertainment to children, any aspect of communication. But it also provides you with a significant opportunity to touch a large number of academic spaces and be successful there. Next slide, please. So here's some specifics just about Ohio State. So in the event that you were interested in applying to our doctoral program, this is just a guide to some of the main things that we would need to see from you, certainly relating to letters of recommendation, your undergraduate GPA. The more successful the school that you go to, or the one with the highest ranking, obviously the higher your academic accomplishments would need to be in order to be considered for the program. We do require a GRE, and then we also are looking for other evidence of success in graduate study, which would certainly include research. Next slide, please. Here's some, just a feel for what our requirements will be. This gives you an idea of different classes that you would be taking and the amount of credits that you would take related to electives, related to our colloquium, and then dissertations. So we actually provide you with 2 full classes during the course of time that you're here in order to pursue your dissertation and do the revisions and writing therein. Next slide, please. And as I mentioned, these are just some of the key areas that we focus in: communication technology, which of course is a rising field, health communication, mass communication, political communication. These are where our highest levels of expertise exist at the university. And if these are areas that interest you, we would certainly love to talk with you about our doctoral program and your place in it. Next slide, please. And this is just an example of some of the placements that we've made recently. You can see that we have a pretty high, considering the numbers that I mentioned to you of how many we have, this is a pretty significant number of people that are placed successfully in high levels of research and teaching. So, the opportunity is there for you to study with the best researchers that we have, not just in our country, but some of the best researchers in the world, and then be able to take that research and your own experiences in research and move out into the world in places like, University of Pennsylvania and Texas Tech, and even in private industry. So we have people who are going into, you see Whole Foods is on here, and other areas of consulting, IBM. So just because you get a doctorate in communication doesn't mean that it's going to require you to move into the academic field. What it does is allow you to move into other venues where communication is and ever more important, certainly in the business world. Next slide, please. And then I just wanted to provide you with our information here. If you were interested in pursuing a communication degree, you would reach out to com@osu.edu, and they would be able to help you with more information, or the phone number here. I would recommend email, especially majority of us are working remotely at Ohio State because of COVID. So, but we are checking our email probably more than we ever have before. So that would be the best pathway if you're interested in getting in touch with our graduate coordinator. Next slide, please. Next, and just hit one more time. Thank you so much. It has been a pleasure, and we really appreciate this opportunity to be with you today.
Thank you so much, Nicole and Spencer. That was really a lovely look into the spirit and the spirit of journalism and what it's all about, and of course, PhD in communications as well. I just do want to apologize for the shifted text in some of those slides. I'm not sure what happened there, but there seems to have been some text that shifted about. I do want to apologize for that. Over to you, Lizzy, for your section on film and associated fields.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. My name is Lizzy Sack. I am the Associate Director of Strategic Initiatives at the New York Film Academy. I have the pleasure of being able to travel the world to speak to students such as yourselves who are interested in visual and performing arts. And in a past life, I also worked wardrobe and costume design for Walt Disney's great-grandson. So I have been on many sets and worked on many films as well, which is very exciting. So before we really go into it, if you could go to the next slide, please. When you're talking about film and 3D animation fields, it's very important to know what exactly you're interested in to ensure that you're studying in the correct field. New York Film Academy is a little bit different than traditional universities in that you have to declare a major before you begin. Because of the intensity that we teach and how hands-on we are, you need to know what you want to do beforehand. So for New York Film Academy, we do have a filmmaking program, which is the most all-inclusive program at New York Film Academy. Within that program, you write, shoot, direct, and edit. You learn sound and cinematography, and you work on a crew of 4 people so that when you're the director, you have 3 people working under you, but then when they're the director, you're working under them. So you're learning each job that is on a film set. But it's important to know what the jobs are on a film set. So the director is the person who will control all of the creative aspects. It's always important to know that the director will wear many, many hats. He manages all of the aspects. He will direct the film by visualizing the script and guide the actors and the technical crew to capture the vision on the screen. What they do from start to finish is really to interpret the script, set the tone of the film, work with other department heads, work with casting directors to find the talent. They direct the actors and the camera. There are times when the director will work with the editors to assemble the film. That's a very specific thing per set and per editor and per director. But they also work with the sound and music department to ensure that everything comes together in their vision. You also have a producer who is probably the most involved person with pre-production, production, and post-production. So they have 2 main jobs. The first is the development of the film. They are the ones who will find and discover the story long before pre-production can even start. They're the ones who initiate and enter into negotiations with whoever is responsible for the source material, with the aim to acquire the rights to the film on their terms. Once the film is acquired, they then have to start the financing section, which is to be able to pitch the movies to studios to secure financing. They have to manage the finances throughout the production to make sure the development is on time and it's on budget. And then once the film is made, it's their job to get distribution sorted. So they are really the most involved of all people. Then when we're talking about screenwriting, of course, I think as all of my other panelists have said, everything begins with stories and what the story is and storytelling. So the screenwriter is the one who is going to write the content for the medium, whether it's film or television or theater. They're the one who is creating the dialogue and the storyline of the script and pretty much crafting the blueprint for the entire film. When we're talking about cinematographers, these are the people who are looking at how the image is created. They're in charge of the camera, they're in charge of the lighting crew. They are responsible for creating the look, the color, lighting, and framing of every single shot. They're also called the director of photography, so they really are the most artistic person on set. They will work very closely with the director to ensure their choices support the director's overall vision. And there are certain directors who will only work with certain cinematographers, but that's usually when you get up to a much higher level of directing. When we go into editing, at most schools, editing will be part of the filmmaking program, but they are the ones who are going to remove all of the unneeded and fit places of films together to make sure that the movie works. They work closely with the cinematographer and sound editors to bring sight and sound together. And editing, I think, is a very specific thing. You either love it or you hate it because you are required to look through hours and hours and hours of footage and then assemble the film a half second at a time to make sure that it is the best film that it can be. At New York Film Academy, we do have a filmmaking program, but we do also have a producing program, screenwriting, cinematography, as well as editing within the filmmaking program. So like I said before, you do have to know what you want to do before you begin at New York Film Academy. So it's important to understand what each one of these disciplines is. And if you are interested, you can always, take a short program or look at our online programs to take, little test the waters and see if that's what you're looking to do. Among many of our other disciplines, we do offer a 3D animation course, which is pretty straightforward. You're working with computer technology to digitally model and manipulate computer images. You are going to make a flat image walk and talk and bounce and move like a person, like a 3D object. You create special effects for film and TV. 3D animation and visual effects often work together. Once you have gone through 3D animation, you can start to specialize in creating various types of images, whether that's humans or objects, or you're focusing on the background or the landscape. But really, all of that will begin by learning the software. And at New York Film Academy, you're starting from day one and learning the software. When we're talking about filmmaking, within your first year, you are writing and shooting and directing and editing 8 of your own films, and you're crewing on 28 others to finish 36 films in 1 year. So it is a very intense program. It's something that if you don't love filmmaking, don't come here, because you are going to eat, sleep, and breathe filmmaking for the whole time that you're here. You're in class 35 hours a week, and then you're shooting on nights and weekends. And we do it like that because it's our job to train you in the safe space that is a school to be able to go out, find a job, be prepared, and be professional. And there really is no 9-to-5 job in this industry. You are on set for 12 to 14 hours a day. When I was on set, I was excited when it was a 13-hour day. So we want to make sure that you are trained to be able to work in this industry. Next slide, please. Once a student has decided on their discipline of study, there are many types of programs and degrees in which to study, and the creative arts is a unique aspect because having a full degree is sometimes not the most important thing to get a job. So for students who are looking to major in visual and performing arts, the question really is, are you looking for a conservatory or are you looking for a university? So a conservatory program, just so everyone is aware, well, it's important to note that many arts are studied via conservatory because it's an intensive artistic training in a creative environment that is designed to really push aspiring artists to develop their skills at the highest level. Within conservatory programs, there are no liberal arts classes like math and science and history. It's just a hyper-focused program on one subject. And many times it can be all that you need to get into the field. New York Film Academy offers 1- and 2-year conservatory programs that can start your career, and then you can always extend into a degree. But I think for visual and performing arts, having a degree is not what's going to get you a job. It's going to be how much work you have created and what your demo reel looks like, and what you have worked on in the past. But for those who are interested in a more rounded experience or interested in studying other subjects as well, that's sort of where you look into the degree programs. And a lot of students who are serious about their arts but really want a more traditional college experience may go into a degree. So at New York Film Academy, we teach both a Bachelor of Fine Arts as well as a Bachelor of Arts, then a Master of Fine Arts and a Master of Arts. So when you're talking about an arts degree versus a fine arts degree, fine arts, it will require that approximately 2/3 of the course is focused on a creation and study of visual arts, and then 1/3 is focused on the liberal arts. So we call it at New York Film Academy a reversed curriculum. So about 70% of your studies are going to be whatever your major is, whether that's filmmaking or acting or 3D animation, and then 30% will be your liberal arts classes. A Bachelor of Arts is where the course ratios are flipped. So you have 2/3 focused on liberal arts and 1/3 focused on the visual arts. So as most of you may know, there are 3 types of degrees in this field in the US. The associate degree is a 2-year degree that you can receive straight out of high school. The bachelor's degree in the United States is traditionally a 4-year degree. At New York Film Academy, it's an accelerated 3-year degree. So you will study full-time year-round for 3 years. So you're able to get into the workforce a little bit quicker. And then we do also offer Masters in Fine Arts and a Master of Arts degree for either 1 or 2 years, depending on how long you want to study. There are no PhDs in this field. You can get a PhD in film studies, but you can't get a PhD in filmmaking. So the Master of Arts is going to be the terminal degree in these fields. It's also important to note your location of where you want to study. We have Boston, we have Ohio, and New York Film Academy has options in both New York, Los Angeles, and Miami, as well as Florence, Italy, and the Gold Coast of Australia. So what I will say is I think for New York Film Academy, at least, the curriculum is the same in all of our locations. What's different is the actual city that you're shooting in. New York City is much more location-based. We're shooting on the streets of New York City. It's a very fast-paced, crazy atmosphere here in New York. In Los Angeles, we shoot on the backlot of Universal Studios. We do also have location shooting in LA. I don't know what happened to my slides, but I will continue. If we had the slides, I'd start talking a little bit more about what it takes to get into a visual and performing arts school. So for most schools, when you are entering, you will have to submit some type of creative portfolio or an audition. So the creative portfolio really can be a great many things. And of course, it's very important to check with your school to see what they are requiring for the creative portfolio. But more often than not, it's not absolutely necessary that you have made films to get into film school. We understand that you may not have had the experience or the time or the money or the equipment in order to make films, but you may have that passion. So of course, if you have made a film, we would want to see the film that you have made. You know, if it is in another language, we would want to have the subtitles on there. If you have made a feature film, that's wonderful. Unfortunately, we aren't able to watch feature films in full, so we would watch snippets of it. But if you haven't made a film, that's okay as well. What we're looking for is anything that shows your creativities, your ideas, the stories that you have to tell. And that can be anything from scripts to drawings, storyboards, short stories, poems. We had one student who was a furniture designer, and he took pictures of the furniture that he designed. So it gets creative at New York Film Academy, but really what we're looking for more than anything is you and the stories that you have to tell and what makes you unique from everyone else. I think both of the other panelists have mentioned all of us here in common, we're storytellers. And that's really what we're here to do, is tell stories, whether that is something that we have lived personally or we've dreamed about. We're here to tell stories, and right now is the perfect time for you to start creating all artistic work. So when you're looking at putting together a 3D animation portfolio, that is where we're looking more for either 2D or 3D drawings. The 2D, we would certainly accept straight 2D drawings, but if you have worked on 3D animation in software, we would love to be able to look at those. But again, it can be photographs or drawings. If you have put together some type of reel, we would love to see that. But again, it's not absolutely necessary that you know the software in order to get into a 3D animation program. On my next slide, what we'll talk about here is a little bit more of where these fields are going in the future, especially now with new technology and lovely COVID-19. Really, one of the first things that is starting to change a little bit is that there's a greater focus on the craft. So the sheer amount of content that gets posted on the internet leads to a very important question of how can filmmakers stand out with so many projects being produced? And we're finding more often than not that it's a more traditional study of the craft. You know, it used to be that you had to go to film school to get your hands on a camera, but that's not the case anymore. Everyone can make movies. You have your smartphone. You can make a film right now if you wanted to. So it's really more about learning the craft and how to tell stories and how to really entice the audience. You know, there are films like Tangerine, which was made, you know, it made waves at festivals throughout the country because it was very low budget. It had a strange approach to cinematography, and it was shot entirely on an iPhone. But there are a number of critics who were quick to point out that that is not what made the film great. The buzz really came because Tangerine had engrossing visuals and smart direction. And because of the director's extensive training, he was able to produce a quality film with unique story and interesting shots. So all of us have the equipment now, more or less, but it's what we do with the equipment that is really important. Another huge thing that is changing right now is internationalization of film and media. You know, it used to be that you had to go to Los Angeles to shoot a film or be on a television show. And that is no longer the case. You know, you guys are coming from India, where you have the second biggest entertainment industry in the world. So it's very interesting to be able to come to the United States, study in either New York or Los Angeles or Boston or Ohio, and be able to bring that knowledge back to help improve Bollywood or Tollywood or Gollywood or however many woods you guys have in India. But the whole world is wanting.
Lizzy, I'm so sorry to disturb you in between. I'm sharing my screen. Can you help me with the slide that you are talking about?
Sure. Keep going.
Okay. Actually, Deborah's, computer is working just differently, so that's why.
All of us are
just stop me wherever you want.
Okay, it's a while.
Sorry.
That's okay. Go one more. One more. One more. Forward. One more. One more. One more. Okay, that's perfect. So really internationalization is what is sort of taking over. The whole world is wanting to get in on productions to get, you know, their countries seen. And I have a story that makes everybody laugh, but I spend a lot of time in Kazakhstan. And when Borat came out, every single person was like, oh my gosh, Borat, you're going to Kazakhstan. It's nothing like that in Kazakhstan, let me just tell you that. But at the same time, the tourism in Kazakhstan jumped 30% just because of that film, essentially. So it's important for countries to really start getting their names out there. I'm sure a lot of people didn't even know Kazakhstan existed before Borat. But you have, you know, countries like South Korea who are winning the Oscar for Best Film. And that really goes to show that anyone who is shooting anywhere can become successful. There are many studios that are shooting all over the world. Game of Thrones really changed that with Iceland and Spain and Brazil and all over the world. So it's what is making it more authentic is being in these actual locations. I was in Vietnam a couple of years ago, and the head of HBO Asia was there because he was scouting location. And the issue wasn't the location, it was that there weren't enough people in these countries that knew how to work on a film set. So more and more people are coming to the United States to get, you know, first-class experience on how to shoot films and then taking it back to change the entertainment industry in their home country. you now have online debuts. So there are many, many, many options now of how your film will get to be seen. It's no longer, that you had to get your film bought by MGM or Universal. We now have Netflix and Hulu and Amazon and YouTube, and they're all not only buying content, but they're creating original content. And I'm sure, as everyone knows, in Netflix, it's very country specific. So you have certain films that are shown only in Netflix India or Netflix Nordic. And it is just really going to show that it doesn't matter where you are now, these stories are going to be told. And it was a while ago, I keep telling these stories, but I was in Kenya and we were doing a very large information session to about 200 Kenyans. And we always ask, why are you here? Why are you interested in this? And one student raised his hand and he said, we're very sick of Americans telling African stories. And that hit me, which is so true, because now everyone has the opportunity to tell their story. Everyone's background is different. We're going into celebrating diversity, especially now in the United States. We have Black Lives Matter. But perhaps because of the increased social commentary in the United States, we are seeing an increase in diversity in film. We're starting to cast female leads in traditional male roles, like with Ghostbusters. We're starting to incorporate more racial diversity into films that may have included primarily a white cast in previous years. Moonlight is a great example of that. But it also allows for greater flexibility and creativity in how films are made, and much more authenticity. And last but not least is transmedia. You're no longer shooting for the big screen. You are now needing to know how to build worlds across multiple media platforms. You have to be able to create content not only for screen, but for TV and Vimeo and Facebook and Quibi. And by creating these experiences that go from phone to computer to the screen, rather than having a one-off narrative, future directors will be able to fully leverage all of today's technologies and connectivity by reaching a wider audience, being able to use all of these things. So next slide, please. I will say thank you. Again, you have my information here, but I would like to just point out that it's important to remember that for the past 7 or 8 months, arts is kind of what has been keeping us company. We've all been watching Netflix and Hulu, and the amount of production that is going to come out of this is going to be massive. So take this time while we are all home and cozy to start creating, and realize that jobs in visual arts are only expanding. This is not going to go away anytime soon. And it's important, I think, as well for the older generation to understand that these are very viable career options. Kushi Kapoor, who is a part of the Kapoor family in India, came and studied acting with us, and her family was very supportive. And we do have many students who will do a bachelor's degree in B.Tech or computer sciences, and then come and study a master's degree in the arts in the United States, because now it's their time and they can finally do what they want to do. But thank you so much for having us. And I think now we'll open it up to questions.
Thank you so much, Lizzy, for such a wonderful presentation. It was such informative. Before we move to question and answers, I would like to thank all our panelists for such an insightful presentation this evening. Thank you everyone for joining in the session. If you found this presentation helpful, do connect further with the Education USA centers. Please feel free to download our mobile app, which is Education USA India, which is both Apple and Android stores available. You can also follow Education USA on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Finally, you can also use our virtual advising services, which we are now offering in response to the global pandemic. Apart from the webinars and virtual advising sessions, Education USA offers a membership for those who require more help in the application process. And for more information, please contact your nearest Education USA office. As mentioned before, you can find more information about Education USA and the universities with us today in the handouts link on the slide. The seventh session is this session is the sixth part of the 7-part Discovery Series webinars. You can tune in to our last webinar, which is happening on the 27th of October. And it is about from hobbies to careers on sports and music education in the US. So if you haven't registered yourself yet, do register and please join us for the session on 27th of October. We'll now move on to our question and answers. We have got a good number of questions from all our attendees from different platforms that they are viewing this session. The first question is for Eric from Emerson College. And the question is, I will be graduating in a completely different major next spring. Can I do a postgraduate in directing even though I haven't graduated in media? Or will I have to do a graduate major first? So Eric, this is for you.
Yeah, no, I'm a little, I guess I'm a little confused by the terminology that they're using. Are they asking about our graduate degrees? I know that it's slightly different in the US because we do have graduate degrees at Emerson College in filmmaking.
Right, so he is interested in postgraduate in direction.
Okay, yeah, so then I would tell him to look at our 3-year film graduate program that we do offer students who have already received a bachelor's degree.
Okay, okay. The next question is that do international students get funded for the master's or the PhD programs in journalism or media studies? So I would request all the panelists to give an insight depending on the universities. So I think we'll start with Professor Hunt.
I think I should take that, Spencer, since.
Yeah. Sure, Nicole, please.
So actually, we don't have either one of those majors. We have master's and PhD in communication. And as I mentioned, there's like those 4 main focus areas under that. And all of our students are fully funded. Master's
Great.
and PhD.
Oh, great. Thank you. Lizzy, if you have something to add to this.
Yeah, sure. So at New York Film Academy, both our undergraduate and graduate students are eligible for multiple types of tuition assistance. We have a talent-based award, which is based off of your creative portfolio. We then have a needs-based tuition assistance, which is based off of you and your family's need for financial help. And then for our undergraduate, we do have a merit-based award. And for our graduate students who are studying in either filmmaking or acting, we have something called a Matthew Modine Master's Scholarship. And Matthew Modine is a very famous actor here in the United States, and he sits on our board, and he has allotted a certain amount of funds to be given to the top students who are applying for master's degrees in either filmmaking or acting. So while we don't offer full scholarships, we do offer partial scholarships in many areas.
Right, thank you. Eric, over to you.
Yeah, so we do offer scholarships for our graduate students and graduate programs. So this would be based off of your academic performance in your undergraduate or your bachelor's degree program. And we don't fully fund students, but students can expect up to around $15,000 per semester or per academic year to be awarded if they do qualify for a fellowship.
Okay, and ideally when it comes to funding or scholarships, so there's always a follow-up questions that how it has been decided, like what are the things that you keep in mind, or what are the application components that usually given a weightage when you decide on a scholarship or funding to the students? So Dr. Kraft, if you want to add something to that for your programs.
Well, as I mentioned, we fully fund our graduate students, and so the competition is extremely high. So we look for a great deal of success in your undergraduate programs. We have a minimum. I think the minimum is at least a 3-point GPA, possibly a 3.5. I'd have to check that. We also look for high GRE scores. So those are going to be the 2 areas that we're looking in the most. And then, letters of recommendation that reflect that you have an interest and have had some experience with research, because we are a very research heavy program at both our master's and our PhD levels.
Okay, thank you. Lizzy, if you want to add something to that answer.
So what we're looking at more than anything really is the talent. We want to see the work that you have created We do not require SAT or ACT. We also do not have a minimum GPA, but we do require that you have graduated from high school. Again, we are very visual and performing arts focused, and it's not necessary that you know how to do geometry. For New York Film Academy, Steven Spielberg didn't even graduate high school. But we're looking mostly at your talent, but then we are looking individually at students and their personal financial needs. We do also require letters of recommendation and a statement of purpose that we'll be looking at as well.
Right, right. Eric, if you can talk about the minimum requirements or probably what exactly the admission committee will look at when they want to.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that your academics, either in high school or during your undergraduate program, depending on what level you're applying to, really dictate, dictate what kind of scholarship you'll get. But we do a holistic review of our applications, which means that we look at all aspects of it, meaning we'll look at your written pieces, your recommendations, all the ways that you can kind of contribute to our community. So I would say that focus on just having the strongest application you possibly can in all areas, but also first and foremost being a strong student academically.
Right, right. Thank you so much. The next question is that what is the difference between a mass media versus a communication studies and versus a journalism major? How do you differentiate that? Would like to take that first?
Eric, you have all of them. Do you want to take that one?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sorry about the jackhammer. Hopefully you can't hear it too loudly. But basically, a journalism major is more focused on students interested in working in the journalism field. So if they're interested in working for an organization like CNN or MSNBC or BuzzFeed or something like that, then you would probably be tilted more towards journalism. Students in communications the audience is a lot wider for that, and the function of that audience is definitely a lot wider as well. So if you're interested in our communication studies program, you could be doing something like human resource management or something like that. It's more generally about connecting with audiences and how to effectively do that, whereas a journalism program focuses more on news, and news is the way in which you're connecting and the various ways that you can utilize that. And if anybody else has anything else to add, I'd be more than happy to kind of hear what they have to say.
We have lost Eric. Eric, we can't hear you. You are on mute.
Oh, that was actually it. My apologies. Sorry. Can people hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, no, that was pretty much the end. If anyone needs me to fill in any points, this jackhammer is very loud. My apologies. I'd be more than happy to kind of fill in anything that may have been missed.
Right. Would Lizzy like to add something to that, Lizzy?
We don't offer mass communication, so I'm not entirely sure. We do have a broadcast journalism program, but it's not a degree program. It's more focused on media for journalism. And it really is just the news, telling stories. And I agree with what Nicole said about fake news. There is no fake news, just falsehoods. So I'm glad you said that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. The next question from the student is that, will a media study in the US limit my work opportunities to US only?
I mean, that's a difficult one for us to answer, I think, because we focus in the US. So, if you go to a US program, you're going to have a US focus, and we recognize that, especially when it comes to a field like journalism, that our standards of First Amendment freedoms are different than they are in other countries. But that is the standard by which we would be providing instruction. And I don't, journalism is journalism across the board. Are there different ethical standards across the board? Yes. I mean, You know, I teach every year in Ethiopia, and a lot of journalism in Ethiopia is funded by the government, is paid for. You know, articles are sponsored. That's not something that we would support in the United States, but the skills remain the same. So, you know, we do know that we have extremely reputable programs that are very highly regarded, but we can't tell you that it's not going to be taught with an American bent, because that's the foundation from which we you know, build our ethical and how we construct our programs is based on that foundation.
Right, right. Lizzy or Eric, if you want to add something to it.
I'll add and just say, you know, for filmmaking is filmmaking, but when you get down to the nuts and bolts, when you're talking about how to apply for permits or how to, you know, work on grants and get into film festivals, that is pretty specific to the United States. But I think because it is sort of the norm, it will grow into what other countries will use. But, you know, learning to tell stories is universal, but the nuts and bolts are more focused on how we do it here in the US.
Right. Eric, would you like to add something to it?
No, honestly, I think everything was covered very well. I think that, you know, it's also interesting because we just don't know what the US immigration policies are necessarily going to look like in 3 or 4 years. They could be very, very different. So that's the only thing I would want to add. But unfortunately, I do have to hop off at this point. So I just wanted to thank everyone for listening to me, and feel free to reach out to me at frederick_osborne@emerson.edu if you have any questions about Emerson or any of its programs. And everyone have a great day, evening, all that sort of stuff. But thanks so much.
Bye, Eric.
Thank you so much, Eric. Thank you. We'll continue with the questions from the students. The next question is that what are the pre-training or prerequisites one required to apply for a journalism undergraduate program? Since usually the students will be pursuing their high schools here, may not have much to do during their high school years. So what are the things that you look forward to, if there are any prerequisites?
We don't have prerequisites for journalism majors that have to do with skill. You know, we believe that everyone who comes in, we assume that they start with no skills per se. And then if we see people who have evidence of skills, then we adjust our program as we move forward in order to accommodate the students that are in front of us. So, you know, we're a pretty nimble program in that way. You know, we are looking for people who have academic success. The journalism students that we get at Ohio State, you know, we have a communication major and a journalism major. The expectations of our journalism majors is higher. So the GPA requirements are higher. You know, we're looking for that GPA to maintain at a certain level of consistency. And generally speaking, we get very high caliber students applying to that major because it's a very difficult major. That skills-based construct that we have requires a lot of performance. So, you know, we're looking for someone who had academic success. That doesn't mean that you were the top, you know, 5% or 10% of your class, but we are looking for people who had academic success.
Right, right, makes sense. Lizzy, if you can add something to it.
For our undergraduate, you know, again, we're looking mostly at creative portfolio. It's not necessary that you have the software experience or the filmmaking experience. It's the creativity more than anything. The letters of recommendation and statement of purpose can help with that. And then I think it is also important to note that for international students, you do have to have some type of English test. For New York Film Academy, that is at least a TOEFL, IELTS, or now Duolingo. But it is important that you should know that most universities will require you to have some type of English test.
Right, right. And that has a follow-up question that, like, for example, students can go as an undecided major for, an undergraduate program. Is that applicable to these courses also, the journalism courses? Can they enter as an undecided major student?
You can enter undecided and then ultimately choose a major. So we don't, we have many undecided students who then ultimately would choose a major in their second year, but that wouldn't be applying to the journalism program. Then that would just be applying to Ohio State.
Okay. Lizzy, what about the NYFA?
we're the opposite. You have to know what you want to do before you can begin because of the way that we teach. But we do offer short-term workshops, like 4 and 8 week workshops, where you can come and sort of test the waters and see if this is what you want to do, and then extend. There are times when students will start in a filmmaking program and then realize that they really just want to be in front of the camera, and they will transfer over to the acting program. But you have to declare a major for New York Film Academy before you begin.
Right. Thank you. We have a couple of questions. If the panelists are fine to stay back for another 5 minutes.
I can do 5 minutes.
Yeah, we'll need to be off at 10, but.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Is work experience required to apply for a graduate study in journalism?
No.
We have
Same
many
for
people.
Lizzy? Okay.
No.
All right. And I think we are on, the second last question, that can a prospective student apply for a graduate program with 15 years of education? If not, what will be a year-long diploma program count towards a 16-year? So we have a lot of students here in India who will be pursuing their, 12+3 education. Will that be considered to enter directly into a postgraduate program?
I'll take that because
Good.
I work in the admissions office, so I know a little bit better. I think it's very dependent on the school, so you would need to send in your transcripts to make sure of that. But for New York Film Academy, as long as you have some type of bachelor's degree, whether it is, I think we do require 16 years. See, now I'm stumped. I can't remember. But as long as it's a traditional bachelor's degree, you certainly are welcome to join a graduate program. If there are questions, you can always use programs like WES, World Education Services, to get your transcripts translated so that we can see what it is equal to in the United States.
All right. Thanks, Lizzy. You have covered the next question's answer, that whether WES evaluation is required for an Indian transcript. So you have answered that very well. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And the last question is, can the bachelor's degree be in major if you want to apply for a master's in journalism or media communications program?
Be in any major? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yes.
Any other major. That's fine?
Yes.
All right. I think that's the end of the questions, and Deborah is back. So I will pass it over to you, Deborah.
Yes, thank you so much, Janet, for stepping in when I had this technical issue. And my apologies to all of you for the slides going off air for that time, the duration. Lizzy, I'm so sorry about that. Thank you all for bearing with us during that time. So just want to wrap up by saying a very big thank you to all our panelists, Lizzy, Spencer, Nicole, also to Eric, who's not here right now. Just a very big thank you for being with us during the session, for providing all the insight, the information, the perspectives that you did. And thank you to our audience too, both in the Zoom meeting as well as the audience joining us live on our social media, for attending the session and submitting your questions. And so we just want to say thank you as well to the team that's been working behind the scenes, especially to support this technical glitch. Aparna, Aditi, Janet and Jaideep, of course, who've been supporting us with Zoom. Thank you to all of you, and have a great evening, great morning, wherever you are. And to all of you participating, we hope to continue conversations with you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a fabulous day.
Thank you.
Stay safe.
Thank you.